Hello, welcome back, and we are about to start the process of transitioning your site over from brackets to Dreamweaver. All right, well, there's nothing wrong with brackets. We love brackets. Brackets is excellent, and so far we've had a lot of fun with brackets, and we've learned to hand code, which is important. However, it's also good to have many tools in your toolbox, and if you are a visual learner, Dreamweaver is one of your best tools. So we're going to take the site that we have coded by hand here so far in brackets, which includes, let's preview it, let's see where we are. Which includes our template page, it includes our navigation, it includes our Google font, it includes our wrapper, and we don't have a lot of content in here yet, but we will by the time we're done. All right, so right now, this is what we have, and I'm going to start the process of moving it over into Dreamweaver. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and quit brackets, and here I am in Dreamweaver. So Dreamweaver is this green icon down here. Now the first thing I have to do before I do anything else is tell Dreamweaver where to look for my website, because Dreamweaver, just like brackets, doesn't know where your website is unless you tell it. So Dreamweaver is easy and visual to learn, and you're going to find that it has a few extra tools that brackets does not. But the first place we're going to go is the site menu. So I'm going to make a new site. So we're telling Dreamweaver, hey, what's the site's name and where should I look for it? Well, we're calling this my for page. And I'm going to go to the desktop because that's where I have stored my website. And as you remember, it's called for-page site skeleton. And I'm going to go ahead and choose. So I'm telling Dreamweaver, here's the name of the site, here's where to look for it, and then I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, so now Dreamweaver brings up in this right-hand panel, it's called Local Files. It brings up all of your pages and it brings up our images folder. So now Dreamweaver knows where everything is in your website. Okay, so I'm going to open up my index page, and I want you to take a look at Dreamweaver and notice that we have code view, which looks just like brackets. We have split view, which gives you both a preview and your code, and this happens to be my favorite view. And we have live view, which shows you how it will look in a browser. One of the advantages of Dreamweaver is rather than having to go through all kinds of machinations to get your video into a browser, we can just do real-time preview and we can choose from any of the browsers that we have right now. So if I want to see how this looks in Safari, I can just go ahead and preview it in Safari. There it is. There's our scroll, etc., etc. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and quit Safari, and we're going to go back and just take a look-see through Dreamweaver itself. So most of what you will need in Dreamweaver is going to be in Files and the Insert menu and the CSS Designer. So we're going to take a quick look through that. So we've told Dreamweaver where to look for our site, and it now knows, okay, here it is, here's the site that we're working with. And you'll notice that also it will select, it keeps a hierarchy of your site down here in DOM, and it'll show you and highlight in blue where a certain HTML element is. And that's pretty nice. So it will also do that if you click on it. So we can see, okay, here's our paragraph, here is our H3, here is our H2. So when we're looking at it in live view, that's a nice way to go through and see what we have in Dreamweaver. Okay, now I'm going to go back to split view here for a second, and I'm actually going to make a new page. So I'd like you to do this along with me. We're going to make a new HTML page. And notice the type, HTML5. I can give it a title, and I'm going to call it Dreamweaver Fun.html. All right, now notice I can attach a CSS file right here. So I'm going to attach the file that we've been working with, and notice I can attach it as a link or as an import. I'm going to go ahead and browse for a link, and I've been using styledivs.css for this. So I am actually going to use, I'm going to go ahead and continue to use that, and I'm going to hit open. Okay, and it wants me to, it's going to prompt me to save it. So I have already attached my style sheet. It's going to write that code for me. And I'm going to hit create. So I'm going to save this. And then let's look at what Dreamweaver has done for us. Fun, so dw_fun.html. Okay, so here's the code that Dreamweaver, I'm going to go to code view here for a minute. Here's the code it has already written for us. So we already attached our style sheet, and it's pre-written all of the skeleton tags that we need for an HTML5 document. Okay, so let's start by going ahead and mousing through the insert menu. So the insert menu is wonderful because rather than coding everything by yourself, you can get all of your tags in one click. So for example, this is actually divided up into all kinds of components. You can build a form, you can create templates, jQuery, which we're not going to get into, and create your own favorites. But we're mostly going to use the HTML. So I can create a div, an image, a paragraph, a heading, a table, a list, a hyperlink. So it's very visual, but I'm going to start out and create our skeleton. So I have on line 10, I have my cursor between the two body tags, and I'm going to create a header. And look, it says at insertion point. I can give it a class or an ID if I want. I don't want to do that quite yet. Hit OK. And I'm going to give it navigation. And I'm just going to work with main and aside. And I'm also going to give it a footer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so this is governed already by a CSS file, which we already wrote. So we already have our orange and black color scheme going. And then we just have some pretty much generic content going on here. Now, here comes the fun part. Okay, so now let's go ahead and style the header right now. So for that, we are going to go ahead and we're going to go into something that's brand new in Dreamweaver, and it's called the CSS Designer. So if I click on the CSS Designer, it gives me one column, but if I click and drag and pull it out and make it a little bit bigger, it actually gives me two columns. And if I click, I can create a new style sheet. Here's all of the selectors that I have. It already knows. And I'm going to check, I'm going to click on styledivs.css. And here are all of the CSS rules that we have already written. Okay, so you can see that if there's a property that we already have in the CSS, it is bolded. The padding is already set in there. Here's our rule for the H1. Okay, so the way this works is this is layout, this is type, this is border, this is background, and this is everything else. So we can navigate through the CSS Designer in this way. Okay, so starting with something blank. So we're starting with our header. So I'm going to add, now we don't have anything here for the header, so I'm going to go ahead and add a new rule. And notice it gives me the words body header. I am going to, by nature, it's going to try to write a class for me. I am going to just modify the tag, so I'm just going to use the word header. So I'm going to click on the word header, and let's do some layout. So we want the layout to be, look, here's all our measurements. We want the layout to be 100% of the screen width. Right now it's 0% of the screen width. So let's make that 100% of the screen width. Okay, and instead of giving it a height of auto, I'm actually going to give it a pixel-based height. Remember, we can do that for vertical measurements at this point. We are not going to want to do that as we move down to a more mobile-friendly site. The header will contract or expand to fit what's available. So I'm going to give, just so that we can see it, I'm going to give the header content a value of 80 pixels high. So there's our header. Now, so everything that we do for the header, for example, I'd like to give it some padding. I'm going to put in 1% padding all the way around, so we can see it does that for us visually. And I'm going to give it a background color. So now I'm going to move to background down here. This is all, you can just scroll through it, or you can click on here and it'll go to everything background. So let's give it a background color of orange. Now I want you to notice something. You can save colors in Dreamweaver. So these are colors I've saved from various other websites that I have going in Dreamweaver right now, but we want that panther orange. So this is not it. So I can either look that up, or I can, there's my panther orange, or I can add it to the panel right there. So now I have a color reference. So it can be RGBA, hex, HSLA, or just regular RGB. So it'll tell you what those values are. Okay, so I'm going to use the hex value since it's a lot easier. So FFA 900 is going to be my version of the panther orange. And then when I click out of it, lo and behold, it's in that color. So that's nice, it's easy. All right, so we have background position, background size, everything related to the background. And let's just take a quick look. So this goes 100% of the screen width. And now we're going to put in some content for the header. All right, so I am going to go back to, so instead of content for new, header tag goes here, I'm going to put in all about the GU Panthers. Okay, so I am going to want a different typeface for that. So again, I'm using the CSS designer to do that. And now I'm going to go to type. Okay, so let's go to font family. So here we have some stacks, font stacks that are pre-made for us. And I'm going to go to manage fonts here. Okay, so manage fonts, you can still plug in your Google Fonts, but I want you to see something else here. You can create new, link to new typefaces from another source, and that is Adobe Typekit. So the Adobe Typekit fonts are nice because unlike the Google fonts, they're the same print and web. Okay, so here we have our local web fonts, we have our Adobe Edge web fonts, and we can again search by serif, sans serif, script, whatever we want. So I am going to search by sans serif, and I'm going to pick, I'm going to try not to agonize too much about picking a typeface here. I'm going to pick Bowel B1. Okay, so again, not agonizing too much. And in a minute that is going to come up. There it is. Now I still do need, there it is, I still do need a font stack. I'm going to need a fallback. You're going to see in a few minutes that the CSS that Dreamweaver writes for you does need some adjusting. So font size normal, I could give it a font size, remember we can give it a font size in M's. Here's the weight. Actually font style normal. So let's give it a font size of, we already specified in the HTML that the default size was 1M. So let's make this typeface 2Ms. All about the GU Panthers. And let's text align it center. So we're not writing any code for that, and we're going to have text decoration of none. You can also do things like if we really wanted to, we could do a shadow. We could do a shadow color. I'm going to advise against that because that is out of favor at the moment. However, I am going to size this to 3ems. And we have text transform. So let's say I want it to be all uppercase. I get that with one click. Letter spacing. So I'm going to do that in ems or fractions of an em. So I'm going to put 0.05 em for letter spacing. And now my letters are spaced out a little bit more. Actually, I think I'm going to put 0.10, so 10% letter spacing. There, and that's actually a little bit much. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to do 0.8. Okay, word spacing, white space, vertical line, and everything to do with lists are also here. I'm going back to 0.1 em. Yeah, I'm going to go for 0.1 em. That was a bit large. All right, so as you can see, it was overflowing the box. Okay, and now let's go through some of the things that we can do with Dreamweaver that we may or may not want to do. For example, we can give this a border. So I can give this a border width of, let's give it a width of 1 em. That's going to be kind of heavy, but we'll go with it. And because our background color is black, we're going to want to choose, actually we're going to want a style. So we can have a lot of different styles here. Our style is going to be solid, and that's big. All right, let's make it less than that. Let's make it half an em. I knew that was going to be too big. 0.5 ems. And we're going to make the color, again, we're going to use the color picker, and we're going to make the color white. Okay, now let's get into some of the other stuff that can be sort of odd to code here in Dreamweaver. So I'm going to, all right, I actually really hate rounded corners. I really do. But we might as well play with rounded corners since we can. So border radius, border collapse. Actually, I'm not going to do rounded corners because I think they're ugly. I can do border collapse, border spacing, and all the things that we can do with the background, like give it an image, which I don't recommend. Give it an attachment. We can give the background a shadow. Again, stuff that I'm really not too into. But everything that we can do in CSS, we can do visually with the CSS designer, plus a little bit more. So anytime we want to change that CSS, we can use a visual source like the CSS designer instead. All right, we can also write media queries, which we'll get to later. All right, so I'm going to dock the CSS designer here for a moment. Come on, baby. Get in there. There, okay. And now let's take a look at live view. So there's my header. So when just a few mouse clicks, I got a little bit of style, look, and feel. But I want to show you a little bit of the downfall of that. So we have our body background color, white. I'm going to go to code view, and let's see if we got any dirty code. Okay, so dirty code means extra code. And here's our code for the header. Some of this is extraneous. We don't need it. So we don't need padding top, bottom, right, and left because we want them all to be the same value. So we're just going to use a value of padding 1%. Okay, we still need a font stack here. Comma, Helvetica, And then if we don't have that, we'll take any old sans serif. Sans serif. Okay, font style normal, font weight 400, font size 3M. And we can probably get away without these, so that's a little bit of extra code that it wrote for us. Text decoration none, I added that, but I don't really need it. We transformed it into uppercase, we gave it some letter spacing, we gave it a border, and I'm going to take out the radius because I decided it was ugly. So you just have to be a little bit aware that the CSS designer might add a few extra lines of code for you. So you always want to go back and check that. Okay, so let's again look at a live view on Dreamweaver Fun. Look, we didn't lose anything by giving ourselves a little bit of by doing things visually, and we didn't lose anything when we lost that extra code either. Okay, so that's it for this video. I'd like you to go ahead and play with the CSS designer a bit. And just remember the three panels that we need are Files, Insert, where we can insert everything that we want, and our CSS designer, where we can work with CSS visually instead of in code. All right, I'm signing off for now, and have a great day.